I thought the worst part of my 70th birthday would be the cake my daughter-in-law smashed into my face, until the ER doctor looked at my X-ray and quietly called 911. The first thing I became aware of was the smell, antiseptic and plastic, sharp enough to cut through the fog in my head. Then the sounds drifted in, a monitor beeping steadily above me, a curtain whispering somewhere nearby, a baby crying faintly down the hall. I tried to turn my head toward the noise, but something hard clamped around my neck, and a bolt of pain shot from the base of my skull down my spine. "Don't move, Mrs. Thompson," a calm voice said. "You're in the hospital. You had a fall." Fall. The word fluttered around in my mind like a loose page. I blinked up at the ceiling, a panel of harsh fluorescent light that made my eyes water. My mouth felt thick and sticky. When I swallowed, I tasted chocolate frosting and the metallic tang of blood. My birthday, I thought stupidly. The cake. Bits came back in flashes, like someone flipping through channels too quickly. The family crowded into my little dining room, my son Daniel's arm around my shoulders. The neighbors, my friend Ruth from next door, people I hadn't seen in years, all squeezed together, their faces glowing in the candlelight. The off-key chorus of "Happy Birthday to You." And then Lena's voice behind me, too bright and sharp, "Make a wish, Mom." I remembered leaning over the candles, drawing in a breath, when something heavy slammed into my face. Cold, sugary frosting filled my nose and eyes. The weight of the cake plate drove my head backward. Laughter burst out around me, then cut off in a sudden choke as my feet lost their grip. I felt something slick under my heel, my arms windmilling in slow motion. The edge of the chair rushed up to meet me, then there was a sickening crack and a white explosion of pain. The next thing I knew, strangers' hands were on me and sirens were howling in the distance. Now, in the bright, humming stillness of the ER, someone gently touched my hand. I turned my eyes toward the touch and saw a man in blue scrubs with a stethoscope around his neck. His name tag read Patel. "I'm Dr. Patel," he said. His eyes were dark and kind, but there was a crease between his brows. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" We had a party," I whispered. My throat hurt, each word scraped. "My daughter-in-law, Lena, she pushed my cake into my face." As a joke, I slipped. "You slipped?" he repeated, not writing anything down yet. "Did anyone push you? Did you feel faint before you fell?" I shook my head as much as the brace allowed. "No, I guess I lost my balance. It was stupid." It did sound stupid, said out loud like that. A child's prank gone wrong. Not something worth neck braces and IVs and doctors' furrowed brows. Not something that ended with my blood on my own dining room floor. "Have you had any other falls recently?" he asked. I hesitated. "Little ones," I said. "I'm clumsy these days. Old bones." "How many would you say?" "In the last 6 months." I stared at the bright square of light above me. The stairs where Lena had grabbed my arm to steady me, and I'd slammed my side into the railing instead. The kitchen. That morning the floor had been damp and my feet shot out from under me, sending me down hard on my hip. The bruise on my wrist from bumping the cabinet door. The way my neighbors had started to say, "You poor thing, you're really taking a beating lately," when they saw the yellow and purple marks climbing up my arms. "A few," I murmured. "Maybe 3, 4. I don't keep track." He exchanged a quick glance with the nurse at my side. "Any dizziness?" "Blackouts, just tired," I said. "Everyone gets tired at my age." He didn't argue, but the little crease in his forehead deepened. "We did a CT scan of your head and some X-rays," he said. "I'm going to go take another look at them. A social worker may come in to speak with you as well, just to see how you're managing at home." "Is that all right?" A social worker. I tried to lift my head again, winced. My son lives with me. "I'm fine. We just want to make sure you stay that way." He gave my hand a brief squeeze. "I'll be right back." He stepped away from my bed, the curtain swaying as he slipped through the gap. I could see his back as he crossed to a computer station just outside. The nurse joined him, and together they studied the glowing images on the screen. From my angle, all I could see was light and shadow, but I watched his face. First neutral, professional. Then his eyes narrowed. He leaned closer. His mouth pressed into a thinner line. He pointed at something on the screen. The nurse's gaze followed, then flicked toward my curtain. My heart started to hammer, quick and uneven. I pulled my fingers out from under the blanket and saw the yellowed bruise at the base of my thumb, half hidden by the medical tape. Another dark blotch peeked out near my elbow where Lena's fingers had dug in last week when I nearly missed a step. It's nothing, I told myself. Old people bruise. Old people fall. That's what I'd been saying for months. That's what Lena said, laughing, every time I winced. Dr. Patel picked up a phone from the counter and turned slightly away from me. His voice dropped, but the room was quiet enough that I could still catch pieces. "Yes, this is Dr. Patel in the emergency department," he said. "I'd like to report a suspected case of elder abuse." The word hit me like a slap. He paused, listening. 70-year-old female, multiple fractures of different ages, ribs, wrist, vertebrae, history of frequent falls, lives with family. Pattern is concerning. My cheeks burned hotter than when the cake had been plastered all over them. Elder abuse. As if I were some sad story on the evening news. As if Daniel, my boy who cried when he scraped his knee and always kissed my cheek goodnight, could be someone who hurt me on purpose. I wanted to shout that he was wrong, that I just bruised like a peach these days, that my son and his wife had moved in to help me, that the cake was a stupid, tasteless joke, not a crime. But my throat closed up, and all that came out was a dry cough. The curtain swished again, and Dr. Patel came back in, this time with a woman in a cardigan and a badge clipped to her collar. "Mrs. Thompson," he said gently, "this is Karen. She's our social worker. We're a little concerned about some of the injuries we're seeing on your scans. I'd like to ask you a few more questions. Is that okay?" "I told you I fell," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted. My daughter-in-law didn't mean. "These injuries," he interrupted softly, "they're not all from tonight." I looked at him then, really looked. There was no judgment in his face, only worry. Pity, maybe. And something else, a kind of quiet anger that I knew wasn't aimed at me. "Who do you live with?" Karen asked. "My son and his wife," I said. "They've been with me about a year. Since he lost his job, they help out. Daniel does the yard and Lena, well, she tries. Has anyone ever hit you, Mrs. Thompson?" Karen's voice was careful, practiced. "No," I said quickly, "no. Daniel would never. Lena she gets excited. She's young. She doesn't know her own strength." Karen and Dr. Padel traded that look again. "Sometimes," he said, choosing his words, "the people who are supposed to take care of us can get overwhelmed. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. But we have a duty to keep you safe. Do you understand?" My eyes stung. "You think my family's hurting me?" "We think we need to look closer," he replied. "I'm going to make sure an officer comes to talk with you, just so we can get the full picture. In the meantime, you're staying right here. You're not going anywhere you don't feel safe." He stepped away once more. Through the crack in the curtain, I saw him pick up the phone again. "Yes, 911, he said quietly. "This is Dr. Patel. I need an officer dispatched to County General ER. I'm reporting a suspected elder abuse case. The patient's family may be involved." I lay there, the collar tight around my neck, my skull throbbing in time with the monitor's beeps, and felt my world tilt in a way that had nothing to do with slick floors or cake frosting. At the far end of the hall, the automatic doors slid open with a hiss. 2 police officers stepped through, speaking briefly with the triage nurse before turning toward my bay. As they started down the corridor, their footsteps steady and inevitable, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might set off another alarm. I had thought that cake in my face was just a cruel joke, a moment of humiliation on what should have been a happy day. I had no idea it was only the final straw in a plan that had started months before. I suppose, to understand how I ended up in that hospital bed with frosting in my hair and the police on their way, you'd have to know a little about where I came from, and how that house became the center of everything. I didn't grow up with much. My father worked nights at the mill, my mother took in other people's laundry, and we lived in a cramped little rental that shook whenever trucks barreled past on the main road. When I was 19, I married John Thompson, the quiet boy from 3 streets over who held open doors and always smelled faintly of motor oil and soap. We didn't have a fairy tale wedding, just a simple ceremony at the church and coffee afterward in the basement. But we had something better, a plan. We both worked every hour we could in those early years. He fixed cars during the day and did odd jobs at night, and I cleaned offices after my shift at the grocery store. Every spare dollar went into an envelope labeled house. I still remember the day we signed the papers, how my hand shook as I wrote my name, and how John squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "We did it, Maggie. Our own place." It wasn't much by some people's standards. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a sagging porch that we patched with scrap wood. But it was ours. We planted a maple tree in the front yard the first spring, a skinny little thing in a circle of uneven bricks. I used to joke that when that tree got big, our boy would be climbing it. Our boy. Daniel didn't come easy. There were years of trying, of crying in the bathroom when I thought no one could hear. When he finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, I felt like the world had handed me all its light at once. John held him as if he were made of glass, tears running down his cheeks, promising him everything. "Someday I'll buy you a big house, Mom," little Daniel told me once when he was about 7, his fists on his hips as he surveyed our tiny living room. "With stairs that don't creak and a TV as big as the wall." "I like my creaky stairs just fine," I said, smoothing his hair. "And I don't need a big house as long as I've got you." He grew up sensitive, always looking to me for reassurance. At school, he worried too much about what other kids thought. At home, he tried to make us proud, bringing home crayon drawings and later report cards. I worked extra shifts so he could go on the class trip to Washington, and John picked up weekend jobs to buy him a second-hand computer when all the other kids started talking about theirs. We weren't rich, but we managed. We paid off the mortgage bit by bit. When John had his heart attack in the garage and never came home, the grief almost swallowed me, but at least I had the comfort of knowing that the house was ours, free and clear. The insurance and his pension weren't much, but I had enough between that and my own small retirement to cover my bills if I lived modestly. I learned to live with the quiet. I cooked for one. I talked to John's picture in the hallway. Daniel moved out long before that, of course. He got a job in sales, some sort of software I never quite understood, and for a while he called me every Sunday, like clockwork. Then Sundays turned into, "Whenever I can, Mom, work is crazy," and then into texts. Whenever I saw his number on my phone, my heart jumped the way it used to when boys called me as a teenager. When he first told me about Lena, his voice was lighter than it had been in years. "She's amazing, Mom," he said. "Smart, beautiful. You'll love her. She works in real estate, staging houses and all that. She's got an eye for style." They came for dinner one night so I could meet her. She was, I'll admit, striking. Long dark hair, nails painted a pale pink, a dress that was probably worth more than my monthly grocery bill. She brought me a bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce and flowers that clashed with my old tablecloth. "Hi, Marge," she said, sweeping in with that smile. No one had called me Marge since one rude boy in high school, and I hadn't liked it then either. "It's Margaret," I corrected gently. "Or Maggie, if you like." She laughed like I was joking. "Oh, you're cute," she said, setting the wine down without looking at me again. All through dinner she talked. About the market. About open houses. About how quaint my place was and how with just a few tweaks, it could be worth so much more. "You know," she said, eyeing the maple tree through the window, now tall and casting shade over the porch. "This lot is prime. People would kill for a single family on a street like this. You're sitting on a gold mine, Marge." "It's home," I said. "We raised Daniel here." She gave a little shrug, smiled at Daniel instead. "Of course, it's sweet." As the years went by, I watched her reshape Daniel. The old sedan he'd been perfectly content with was suddenly embarrassing for her clients to see. He traded it in for something shiny with a payment that made my stomach clench when I heard the number. They moved into a condo downtown with granite counters and floor-to-ceiling windows because, as she put it, image matters. Whenever they visited, she'd wrinkle her nose at my curtains or my mismatched plates. More than once I caught her opening cabinets without asking, pulling things out and rearranging. "You don't need this old crock pot," she declared one day, holding up the dented pot John and I had bought our first Christmas together. "Or these chipped mugs. Clutter just makes you depressed. Did you know that?" Before I could protest, she had already set them aside in a box marked, "Darn it. If I told a story I'd told before, She'd glance at Daniel and roll her eyes, as if I couldn't see. Your mom's memory is getting worse. She'd whisper not so quietly, and he'd chuckle awkwardly and change the subject. When Daniel called last year, his voice was tight. They're restructuring, he said. I've been let go. My heart sank. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. It's fine, he said, clearly not fine at all. It's just the condo, the car, Lena's business. It's all a lot. We're bleeding money. Mom. And you shouldn't be alone in that house anyway. He came over a week later with Lena, both of them looking serious and determined. They sat at my kitchen table like two lawyers about to present a case. Daniel began, we've been talking. It would make so much sense for us to move in with you for a while. Temporarily, Lena chimed in. Just until we get back on our feet. We'd help with the bills, the chores. You shouldn't have to worry about shoveling snow or climbing ladders at your age. I don't climb ladders, I said, attempting a joke. Not since your father fell off one trimming the hedge. They smiled politely, then continued. Seriously, Mom, Daniel said, reaching for my hand. You shouldn't be alone. It would be good for all of us. We could save on rent, you'd have company. Win-win. Loneliness is a quiet H that you get used to, like a bad knee. You don't realize how much it hurts until someone offers you a seat. The idea of having my son under my roof again, of hearing footsteps in the hall and someone else's voice in the evenings. It warmed a place in me that had been cold for a long time. If you're sure it wouldn't be a burden, I said. A burden? Lena laughed. Please, we'd be doing you a favor. They moved in a month later. My spare room filled with their clothes, my driveway with their shiny car. At first, I told myself it was wonderful. I cooked for 3 again. Daniel mowed the lawn, Lena to her credit. Did the grocery shopping and insisted on paying for all the extras. But little things began to pile up. One morning I walked into my kitchen and stopped dead. My shelves were all wrong. The plates were where the glasses used to be. My recipe box, the old metal one with John's handwriting on stained index cards, was gone from its spot by the stove. Oh, Lena said when I asked. I reorganized. Your system was chaotic. I threw out some of those old, unreadable recipes. We'll just look things up online now. My throat tightened. Those unreadable scribbles were the only place left where I could see my husband's hand, the flowery fingerprints he'd left behind. I found the box later in the hall closet, half the cards missing. Another time, I was telling Ruth about the time Daniel tried to flush his goldfish when he was 3 and flooded the bathroom. Halfway through, Lena cut in. Yes, the fish story, she said, not bothering to lower her voice. She's told that like 10 times this week. Honestly, I'm starting to worry Dan. Maybe we should get her checked. I laughed it off, cheeks burning, and later told myself she was just blunt. Young people don't have the same manners, that's all. Then the paperwork started appearing. It was always just routine. Lena would wave a few sheets at me while I was washing dishes or watching my show. Hey Marge, can you just sign here? We're adding our names to the utility accounts. That way we can manage things online. It'll make life easier for you. I squinted at the fine print, my reading glasses slipping down my nose. Can't Daniel handle it? He's busy, she said. I'm the organized one. Here, and here. Something in my gut clenched. I'd been raised to read before signing. John and I had pored over every mortgage document like it was scripture. I think I'll take these to bed and look them over, I said. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Her smile flattened just a little. Sure, she said. If you want to make everything complicated. That night, alone in my room, I flipped through the pages. Most of it was what she'd said, boring language about accounts and online access. But one line caught my eye. Authorized user with full management rights. It sounded like more than just paying a bill. I didn't sign. The next day I told her I'd lost the forms. She clicked her tongue, then let it drop, for the moment. The turning point, at least the one I can see clearly now, came on a quiet Thursday evening, after a glass or 2 of the expensive wine Lena favored. We were at the table, the 3 of us, the dishes from dinner still between us when Lena leaned her chin on her hand and said, in a tone as casual as asking about the weather, so, what happens with the house someday, Marge? I blinked. What do you mean? Well, she said, tracing the rim of her glass. We're basically taking care of you now. It's a big asset. It affects all of our futures. Do you have a will? Has it been updated since John passed? I shifted in my chair. We made one years ago. Everything to each other, then to Daniel. I haven't changed it since. You should, she said quickly. For your safety. Lawyers always say that. You don't want the state deciding things. Daniel squeezed her knee under the table, but he didn't contradict her. We just want you to be safe, Mom, he said. You know we'd never let anything happen to you. We're family. She smiled then, all teeth, and her eyes slid around the room, lingering on the walls, the ceiling. That old maple tree's shadow stretching across the curtains. The way she looked at my house made my skin prickle. It was the same way she looked at properties in the glossy brochures she brought home, already rearranging furniture in her mind, already spending the commission. I told myself she was just being practical. Times were hard. Young couples had to think about the future. But my mother's voice rose up in the back of my mind, as clear as if she were sitting at the table with us. When money's on the table, she used to say, you'll see people's true faces. I didn't know it then. But that conversation about my will wasn't just curiosity. It was phase one. The first real sign that something was terribly wrong came a few months after they moved in, when the little accidents started to happen. The first time I fell, really fell, it was on the stairs with a basket of laundry in my arms. It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind that used to blur together when I lived alone. Now, with 2 extra people in the house, there were always more towels, more socks, more shirts balled up with mysterious stains. I didn't mind. Folding clothes was soothing, a little piece of the life I'd always known. I just finished washing a load and was carrying the basket down from the 2nd floor. The stairs in our house are steep and narrow, but I've walked them 1,000 times. I know every creak, every dip in the wood. I had one hand on the banister, the basket tucked against my hip, when I heard Lena's heels clicking behind me. Wait, I'll help, she called. Before I could answer, something thudded into my back. Her hip, or her hand, or the basket she was trying to grab from me. I'm still not sure. All I know is my body jerked forward. My foot missed the next step. For one terrifying second, I was weightless. I twisted, trying to keep hold of the banister, and managed to stay mostly upright, but the basket lurched. My wrist bent at an awful angle, and the side of my body slammed into the wall. The basket toppled, clothes spilling down the stairs like a soft avalanche. I couldn't breathe. A hot electric pain shot from my wrist up into my elbow. Spots danced in front of my eyes. "Oh my God, you scared me!" Lena gasped. Her voice rang against the narrow walls. "You really shouldn't be doing stairs anymore, Marge." She pressed a hand over her heart like she was the one who'd nearly gone tumbling. "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice came out thin. "Just give me a second." She scooped up the fallen shirts, clucking her tongue. "Honestly, you should have waited. You don't bounce back like you used to." Daniel came running when he heard the commotion. "What happened?" he asked, looking from my pale face to the scattered laundry. "Your mom decided to lug a full basket down the stairs by herself," Lena said, her tone half scolding, half amused. "She almost wiped out. Scared me half to death." "I didn't almost wipe out," I protested, cradling my wrist. It had started to throb, a dull, insistent ache. "She bumped into." "It was an accident," Lena cut in quickly. "I tried to grab the basket. My bad, okay. But still, she shouldn't be doing this stuff." Daniel's attention shifted fully to me then. "Let me see," he said gently, taking my hand. I hissed when he moved it. "Maybe we should get X-rays," he said. "Oh, don't be dramatic," Lena said. "Ice and rest. She just sprained it. Hospitals are full of germs." We compromised with a bag of frozen peas and one of my dish towels, wrapped around my puffy wrist as I sat at the kitchen table. Daniel fussed, hovering, but his words echoed hers. "Mom, maybe this house is just too big," he said, shaking his head. "What if you fall worse next time? You were always graceful before." "Now you're tripping on everything," I laughed weakly. "I'm fine, just clumsy today." Inside, a small, indignant voice whispered, "I've carried laundry down those stairs since before you were born. When did I become someone who can't be trusted with her own socks?" The bruise on my side bloomed over the next few days, a dark smear that made it hard to sleep on my left. My wrist stayed sore longer than it should have. Every time I winced, Lena would tut. "Maybe we should wrap you in bubble wrap, Marge," she'd say, always with that teasing edge. "You're going to break something important." I told myself she was just trying to keep things light. The second big fall came in the kitchen. It was early, the house still quiet. I liked those mornings, when I could make my coffee and read the paper before anyone else was awake, when the house felt like mine again for a little while. I shuffled in, slippers on my feet, and stepped onto the linoleum. My foot went out from under me so fast I didn't even have time to yelp. One moment I was upright, the next I was on the floor with a crash, my hip taking the brunt of it, the breath slammed out of my lungs. I lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember how to inhale. When I pushed myself up onto my elbow, my hip screamed in protest. There was a faint sheen on the floor, catching the morning light. Water. Cleaner. The bottle of floor cleaner sat open on the counter. A damp mop leaned against the wall. "Lena," I called, my voice thin. She appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, eyebrows arched. "What happened?" she asked. "I slipped," I said, gesturing weakly to the floor. "Did you mop?" She looked at the floor, then back at me. "I did it last night, I told you." "You never listen when I say to watch your step. And where are those non-slip slippers I bought you?" "You're going to kill yourself in here." "I didn't hear you," I said, struggling to sit up. She sighed, dramatic. "You always say that." "Honestly, I can't childproof the whole house." She helped me to my feet, one hand under my arm. Her grip was firm, almost bruising. I tried not to flinch. Over the next few weeks, new marks appeared on my body like ink blots. A dark ring around my upper arm where someone had grabbed me as I almost missed a step. A yellow bruise on my shin from bumping into the coffee table that had been in the same place for 30 years. A tender spot on my rib where I'd leaned too hard against the counter. I started to move more slowly, testing each step, my hand never leaving the banister. I told myself it was just age catching up. Still, late at night, lying awake and cataloging aches, I'd whisper to the dark, "I've never been the clumsy one in my whole life. Why start now?" Little things began to disappear or shift too. My blood pressure pills, which I kept in the third kitchen drawer, started turning up in the bathroom cabinet. "I moved them," Lena said when I asked. "You're always forgetting them." "I'm just helping you stay on schedule." Once, I opened the bottle and frowned. The pills looked slightly different, a shade off, a different imprint. The pharmacy must have switched brands. Lena said casually when I mentioned it. "You know insurance companies. They're always changing things. Here, take it. Don't stress." I swallowed it, because what else do you do when your son's wife stands over you with a glass of water and a pill, smiling like she's doing you a favor? Around the same time, my money started feeling slippery too. A 20 I was sure I'd put in my wallet was gone when I went to the store. The electric bill, which I'd always paid with a check, arrived with a note saying, "Thank you for enrolling in automatic payments." "Oh, I did that," Lena said when I asked. "I set up online banking for you, so you don't get scammed." "You can't keep track of all these things, it's confusing." "I can write a check," I protested. "Sure, but why?" She laughed. "It's the 21st century, Marge. I'll handle it. You just enjoy retirement. Maybe I should see the statements." I started, but she was already out of the room. There was a heaviness in me that had nothing to do with my bones. Shame, thick and cloying. I didn't want to be the nagging old woman who couldn't be gracious about help. Every time I opened my mouth to question something, I heard my own voice turning sharp, suspicious. I didn't like that version of myself. Daniel, when he was home between job applications and networking events, seemed tired all the time. He'd sink into the couch with his laptop, Lena hovering behind him, scrolling. "She's just trying to help, Mom," he said one evening after I mentioned how she talked over me at the doctor's office. He had insisted on taking me in when my wrist and hip were still bothering me. Lena came too, of course. In the exam room, as Dr. Stevens asked about my falls, she answered for me. "She's been off her game lately," Lena said brightly. "Forgetting things, losing her balance. I keep telling her to use a cane, but she's stubborn." "I can answer," I said, heat creeping up my neck. Dr. Stevens glanced at me over his glasses. Have you been more forgetful, Margaret? I don't think so, I said. Maybe a little? Everyone forgets their keys sometimes. Any dizziness before the falls? He pressed. No, I said, then hesitated as Lena shook her head behind him, unseen. Just I moved too fast is all. He sighed, wrote something down. Your blood pressure is a bit low today. We might adjust your medication. I'd recommend a cane for stability and maybe some physical therapy. On the drive home, Lena kept up a stream of chatter about how independent insisted on being. We're sacrificing our lives to be here for you, she said at one point, her voice tight. And you act like we're the enemy. Do you know how many of my friends just dump their parents in a home and move on? Lena. Daniel murmured, but he didn't correct her. I stared out the window at the familiar streets blurring by. The houses looked the same as they had for decades, but everything in my life felt tilted. The first time she mentioned a nursing home, it was almost offhand. I was in the living room, rubbing a fresh bruise on my thigh I'd gotten from bumping the table, when she perched on the arm of the chair. At some point, she said, swirling the ice in her glass, we have to be realistic. This house is dangerous for you. All these stairs, slippery floors. Assisted living might be safer. A chill ran through me. This is my home, I said. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, but not with her eyes. We'll see, she said. Later that night, as I passed by the kitchen, I heard her voice, low and urgent. If she keeps this up, she was saying to Daniel, hole in bad fall and we'll be dealing with a lawsuit, or worse. We need to make some decisions. I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. Lawsuit. Decisions. I shouldn't have been listening, I told myself. It was late, they were stressed, they loved me. Still, the next morning when she slid a glossy brochure onto the table, just information, she said, about a lovely assisted living community with a smiling gray-haired couple on the cover. I felt something inside me crack. I kept telling myself they meant well, that I was reading too much into things. I clung to that thought like a life raft. Until the paperwork started. The paperwork came on a bright afternoon. The kind of day when the light makes everything look gentler than it is. I was at the kitchen table, clipping coupons out of habit more than need, when Lena breezed in with a manila folder tucked under her arm and a too-wide smile. Good news, Marge, she said, dropping the folder in front of me so it slid across the plastic tablecloth. We went to see a lawyer. What? I asked, glancing up. Me and Daniel, she said, like it was obvious. Estate planning, you know. It's just to protect you, Mom. The word, Mom, still didn't sit right in her mouth. It always sounded like she was trying it on for size. I opened the folder. A thick stack of papers stared back at me, covered in dense paragraphs and legal phrases that blurred together. What is all this? I asked. Just the usual, she said, pulling out a few sheets and laying them in a neat row. An updated will. A durable power of attorney. And this one lets us manage the property for you. Keeps everything out of probate, avoids taxes, blah blah. Boring but important stuff. She tapped each page with a manicured finger. Sign here, and here. We're actually running late for an appointment, so if you could just... She slid a pen into my hand before I'd even finished reading the first line. My name was printed in several places, with grantor and principal after it. I'd like to look these over, I said slowly. Maybe have my own lawyer read them. The ones John and I did were different. Her smile thinned. Your lawyer, she repeated. Marge, with all due respect, when's the last time you saw that guy? The 70s. I bristled. He handled John's estate. He knows our situation. Lena sighed, loud and theatrical. I guess you don't trust us, she said, pushing her chair back a little. I mean, we're here, living with you, taking care of everything, sacrificing so much, and you think we're, what, vultures? The word stung because it was the same one I'd heard in my own head and tried to swat away. I didn't say that, I protested. This is a lot. I need time. She blinked rapidly, eyes shining. You know what? Forget it. I was trying to be proactive. Daniel and I are drowning in stress. We're thinking about starting a family, and I thought, hey, let's make sure his mom is protected, too. But if you think I'm out to get you... Her voice broke and she turned away, dabbing at her eyes with the back of her hand. Guilt washed over me, thick and familiar. Lena, I didn't mean. No, it's fine, she said, already standing. We'll just let the government decide what happens when something goes wrong. I'm sure strangers will have your best interests at heart. When Daniel came home that night, he didn't kiss my cheek like he used to. He went straight to the fridge, took out a beer, and stood with the door open longer than necessary. Lena said you refused to sign the papers, he said finally. I didn't refuse, I said. I just want someone to explain them to me, properly. He closed the fridge and turned to me, his face drawn. She's just trying to plan for our future and yours, Mom. Why do you act like we're vultures? There it was again. I don't, I said quickly. I trust you. I do, it's just scary. What's scary? He snapped. Who's making sure you're taken care of? We're drowning, Mom. The condo lease, the car payments, Lena's business loans, the debt, and you have this huge, paid-off house. Would you really rather leave it empty someday than help your own family? I plan to leave it to you anyway, I said. You know that. Your father and I. Then why make it so hard? He cut in. It's just a power of attorney. If you trust us, sign. If not, I don't know what to say. His shoulders slumped, and for a second he looked like the boy who used to stand on my porch, clutching his backpack, afraid of the first day of school. The urge to protect him battled with the prickle of unease under my skin. Bring me the medical one, I said quietly. The one that lets you speak for me if I can't. I'll sign that. The rest, I need more time. He exhaled, some tension leaving his jaw. Okay, he said. Thank you. I signed the medical directive with a shaky hand, a knot forming in my stomach as the ink dried. After that, the ground under my feet seemed to tilt a little more every week. At a neighbor's barbecue, Lena held court by the grill, laughing too loud, a drink in her hand. I stood with Ruth, paper plate balanced carefully, when the ketchup slipped from my fingers and landed with a splat at my feet. Oh, Mom! Lena called across the yard, grinning. Did you lose the ketchup again? Last week it was the milk. I swear. You'd lose your head if it wasn't screwed on. People chuckled politely. My cheeks burned. I put the milk in the pantry once, I said, trying to laugh along. One time. She's been doing little things like that a lot lately. Lena told the group, her voice dropping conspiratorially but loud enough for everyone to hear. We're keeping an eye on it. You know how it is. A neighbor patted my hand. You're lucky to have such a devoted daughter-in-law, she said. If I was so lucky, why did I feel so afraid? My medicine, which used to make me a bit lightheaded for an hour and then settle, began hitting me harder. Sometimes I'd stand up and the room would sway alarmingly. My thoughts felt slow, like wading through syrup. One morning, taking out the bathroom trash, I noticed a pill at the bottom of the bin. It was broken in half, the powdery insides exposed. It looked like my blood pressure medication, but I couldn't be sure. Did you drop one? I asked Lena later, holding up the trash bag. She glanced at it briefly. Probably the pharmacy messed up, she said. They sometimes put extras in. Don't worry about it. Less thinking, more resting. Okay. A week after that, a letter from the bank arrived. I opened it at the table, my heart doing a little tap dance. Dear Ms. Thompson. It read, this is to confirm the addition of a new online user to your account. Lena? I called. She appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Why is the bank saying there's a new user on my account? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She took the paper, skimmed it, and smiled. Oh, that. Just a bank error. I tried to set up mobile access for you ages ago, remember? They must be just catching up. I'll call them. Shouldn't I call? I asked. She laughed. You hate those automated menace. I'll handle it. I watched her leave the room with my letter, my skin crawling. The next statement I saw had fewer details than I was used to, just summaries. When I asked about it, she shrugged. It's all online now, she said. You really don't need to stress about this stuff. We've got it. We've got it. Those words echoed later that week when she burst into the kitchen with a flyer in her hand. Big birthday coming up, she sing-songed. 70! We have to do something special. I don't need a fuss, I said. A quiet dinner is fine. Absolutely not, she declared. You only turned 70 once. We'll invite everyone. Family, neighbors, church people. We'll show them how loved you are." The idea of all those eyes on me made my stomach flutter, but Daniel, who'd been unusually quiet, nodded. "It'll be good, Mom," he said. "We haven't had people over in ages." Behind closed doors, though, the tone was different. One night, passing their room to get to the bathroom, I heard their voices. "How long is this going to drag on?" Lena hissed. "We can't stay in limbo forever, Daniel. We need that house sold or her in a facility or something." "Keep your voice down," he muttered. "She's not going anywhere unless she agrees. We're not there yet." "Then push harder," she said. "Because the bills are not waiting, and neither am I." I crept back to my room, heart pounding. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan as it whirled slowly, and for the first time, the word, plan, formed clearly in my mind, heavy and cold. The next morning, while they were out, I pulled a step stool to the hall closet and climbed carefully, ignoring the protest in my knees. On the top shelf, behind an old suitcase, I found the metal cash box where John and I had once kept emergency money. Inside, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, were our original will and the deed to the house. My hands shook as I held them. These pieces of paper were the last proof of the life John and I had built together, of the promises we'd made. I took the bundle into the kitchen, opened my battered recipe box, and slid the documents underneath the index cards under meatloaf and apple pie, places Lena never looked, since she'd rather order takeout than cook from a stained card. It felt melodramatic, like something out of a movie, hiding deeds in with recipes. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd probably take them out next week and laugh at myself. But as I closed the box and slid it back onto the shelf, something inside me finally spoke up louder than the guilt and the rationalizations. "They might love you," it said, "but they also love what you own." I tried to push that thought away as the days ticked down to my birthday. Lena planned every detail of the party with a zeal that would have been flattering if it hadn't felt so performative. She ordered a giant cake from a fancy bakery, strung up 70 and fabulous banners. Invited people I hadn't seen in years. "You're going to have the best day," she told me, fussing with my hair as guests began to arrive. "Everyone will see how well we're taking care of you." I stood there in my own living room, surrounded by balloons and laughter, and felt a knot of dread sit heavy in my chest. I almost went through that birthday without any ally at all, just me and my doubts and the two people who claimed to love me most. But someone unexpected was watching. If Lena hadn't insisted on the banner that said, 70 and fabulous, in glitter letters, I might have forgotten it was my birthday at all. The day felt less like a celebration and more like a show being staged in my own living room. By noon, the house was buzzing. Paper plates stacked on the counter, folding chairs borrowed from the church lined up along the walls, balloons tied to the back of my dining chairs. Lena moved through it all like a director, barking little orders with a smile. "Mom, can you move a little faster with those napkins?" she said at one point, snatching the stack from my hands. "We're on a schedule." Her fingers dug into my arm as she steered me out of her way. It wasn't a gentle touch. I swallowed a wince. "Careful," a familiar voice said behind me. "She's not a shopping cart, you know." I turned and saw Ruth standing in the doorway, a Tupperware container in her hands and a frown on her face. Ruth had lived next door for as long as I'd been in that house. We'd raised our kids at the same time, swapped casseroles when husbands were sick, whispered together on porches late into summer nights. If anyone knew me, it was her. "Ruth," I said, relief flooding through me. "You came early. Somebody has to keep you out of trouble," she said, stepping forward to kiss my cheek. Up close, her eyes sharpened. "Lord Margaret, what happened to your arm?" I looked down automatically. My sleeve had ridden up, exposing the faded yellows and purples that ringed my upper arm like someone had gripped it too hard and held on. "Oh, that," I said quickly, tugging my sleeve down. "I bumped into a door. You know me." "When did you start bruising like a banana?" she asked softly. Before I could answer, Lena swooped back in. "Hey, Ruth," she chirped. "Thank you for the potato salad. You're a lifesaver." Mom's been moving a little slow. Her hand landed on my shoulder again, fingers firm. "I'm fine," I protested. "Sure you are," Lena said, that fixed smile not reaching her eyes. "We just don't want you overdoing it, right?" As she flitted away, phone already in hand, Ruth leaned closer. Has she always talked to you like that? She murmured. She's just high-strung, I said. Wants everything perfect. Ruth's gaze followed Lena as she stepped into the hallway, still talking into her phone. Once this house is finally in our name, Lena said, her voice low but carrying in the quiet, things will be different. Just wait. We won't be stuck like this forever. My stomach dropped. Ruth's head snapped around to me. In their name, she repeated under her breath. Margaret, what is going on? I forced a laugh that sounded thin even to my own ears. You know young people, I said. Always thinking ahead. Ruth did not look convinced. A little later, when the first wave of guests had arrived and Lena was busy charming them, Ruth found me alone in the kitchen, standing at the sink, rinsing out coffee cups that didn't need rinsing. All right, she said, closing the door with a quiet click. Talk. What's really going on here? I stared down at the swirling water. The hum of conversation from the living room bled through the wall, a muffled soundtrack of clinking glasses and polite laughter. There's nothing, I said. They moved in after Daniel lost his job. It's been an adjustment. Adjustment, she snorted. I've seen the way she yanks you around. The way she talks over you. And those bruises are not from bumping one door. I opened my mouth to argue and found, to my surprise, that I didn't have a good lie ready. The truth pressed at my lips, hungry to get out. I've been falling a lot, I said instead, choosing the smallest piece of it. On the stairs. In the kitchen. The doctor says I should use a cane. Have you always fallen a lot? She asked. No, I admitted. Not until lately. And lately is when they moved in. She said, more statement than question. I swallowed. They want me to sign things. I blurted. Papers. Wills. Powers of attorney. Lena says it's to protect me. I signed one for medical stuff, but the others I hid our old will and the deed. I feel crazy even saying that out loud. Ruth's face darkened. She set the Tupperware down with a definitive thunk. My sister went through something like this, she said. Her son moved in, said he'd help with the bills. Next thing she knew, her accounts were empty and he'd taken out loans in her name. She almost lost her house. That's not Daniel, I said automatically. The words felt like reflex. He's a good boy. He listens to her so much. I'm not saying he's a bad person, Ruth replied. I'm saying people do ugly things when they're scared and there's money involved. And your daughter-in-law, I don't like the way she's circling. I tried to picture Daniel emptying my accounts, signing my name. The image wouldn't form. Instead, I saw him at age 10, holding up a lopsided clay bowl he'd made for me. For your rings, Mom, he'd said proudly. So you don't lose them. Ruth, I'm old, I said quietly. I fall. I forget where I put the milk. Maybe I'm the problem. Oh, she snorted. Falling once is an accident. Falling over and over when someone else controls your pills and your money. That's a pattern. Her voice softened. Your bruises don't lie, Margaret. Someone is hurting you, whether they mean to admit it or not. The words, hurting you, lodged in my chest like a stone. There's a name for this, she went on. Financial exploitation. Elder abuse. I volunteer with that senior hotline at church, remember? I've heard too many stories that start just like yours. Elder abuse. Coming from Dr. Patel later, the phrase would feel like a diagnosis. Coming from Ruth, it felt like a lifeline and a slap at the same time. I can't accuse my own son, I whispered. I'd rather die. I'm not telling you to run out there and call the cops in front of the cake, she said. But you need help that doesn't live under your roof. A lawyer who works for you. Or at least call the Adult Protective Services line. They can explain your options. There are people whose job it is to deal with this. She dug in her purse and pulled out a worn card, the edges softened from being handled. Here, she said, pressing it into my palm. Legal aid. Elder Law Clinic. They help my sister. They'll at least tell you where you stand. I stared at the card. Black ink on white. A number. An address. A way out I hadn't let myself imagine. After the party. I heard myself say. I'll call after the party. I don't want to make a scene today. Ruth's mouth tightened. You sure you're safe until then? I'm not in danger, I said quickly. They're not hitting me. It's not like that. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. All right. But if something feels wrong, you call me, day or night. And keep that card somewhere she won't reorganize. I slid it into my apron pocket under a stack of napkins. My fingers brushed the stiff edge like a secret. The kitchen door swung open. Lena stood there, smile plastered on, eyes sharp as knives. "Everything okay in here?" she asked. "You two look so serious." "Just girl talk," Ruth said lightly. "I was telling Maggie she's not allowed to wash dishes on her birthday." Elena laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, I've been telling her that for months. She never listens." Her gaze flicked from Ruth to me, lingering a beat too long. "Come on, Mom. Time to play hostess. Everyone's waiting to shower you with love." As Ruth brushed past her, carrying the potato salad, Lena's voice dropped barely above a whisper near my ear. "Some people just love drama," she muttered. "Don't let them get in your head." I smiled weakly and let myself be steered back into the living room. The party unfolded like a play. People hugged me, pressed cards into my hand, told me how wonderful I looked. Daniel stood beside me, arm around my shoulders, his smile a little tighter than usual. Lena floated, refilling drinks, laughing at the right moments, draping herself over us like tinsel. "Let's all raise a glass to my amazing mother," Daniel said at one point, clinking his fork against his cup. "She's given me everything, including my stubborn streak." Everyone chuckled. I tried to soak in the kind words, but my mind kept drifting to the card in my apron and the look on Ruth's face in the kitchen. When it was time for cake, Lena insisted on turning off the lights. "Everyone gather round," she called. "We've got a surprise for the birthday girl." Ruth squeezed my hand before stepping back, her phone in her other hand, the camera already open. "I'm getting this on video," she said. "For proof you were once young and beautiful." Once. I snorted, and for a moment I felt like myself. The room glowed with candlelight as Lena emerged from the kitchen, both hands under a massive cake. 70 in sparkling numerals flickered on top. People began to sing off-key in earnest. "Make a wish, Mom," Lena crooned as she set the cake down in front of me. I leaned in, the heat from the candles warming my face. My wish, ridiculous as it was, floated up anyway. Let things go back to the way they were. Let my son see me, really see me, not as a burden or a bank account. I drew in a breath to blow. Then, without warning, the cake lurched. Lena's hands shot forward, shoving the whole confection into my face. The heavy cardboard base slammed against my nose, frosting exploding over my eyes, up my nostrils. The room erupted in gasps and half-started laughter. For a second I thought it was just that, an over-enthusiastic prank. But then I felt it pressure behind the plate, a deliberate push. My neck snapped back. My feet, already not as steady as they used to be, slid on something slick underfoot. Maybe fallen frosting, maybe a rug corner pulled up just enough. The world tipped. Time slowed. I felt my arms flail, the weight of the cake dragging my upper body, my heels skidding. The edge of a chair rushed up toward me, unforgiving wood in a universe of softness. The impact was a white explosion. Pain shot through my skull, hot and bright, and then everything went muffled and far away. I heard Ruth scream, "Call 911," as if from the end of a tunnel. Someone shouted my name. There was a chorus of, "Oh my God," and, "Is she breathing?" And Lena's voice, high and panicked. "It was an accident. I was just joking." "Oh my God, I didn't mean." "Mom, wake up." Hands touched my face, smearing frosting and blood together. Someone pressed a napkin to the back of my head. I tried to open my eyes, but they were glued shut with sugar and tears. The siren's wail came next, cutting through the chaos. Paramedics arrived in a flurry of questions and efficient movements. A neck brace slid around me. I was lifted onto a backboard. As they carried me out, I caught a glimpse of Ruth's face, pale and furious, her jaw set. In the ambulance, a paramedic shone a light in my eyes. "Mom, can you tell me your name?" he asked. "Margaret Thompson." I mumbled. "Do you know what day it is?" "Me birthday," I said, the word tasting bitter. Lena's face hovered over me, mascara streaked, hands fluttering uselessly. "She's been falling a lot lately," she told the paramedic breathlessly. "It's like she's just off balance, you know. I keep telling her to use a cane." The paramedic glanced at the bruises on my arms as he secured the straps. "Has anyone reported these falls to her doctor?" he asked. "Oh, they're just little spills," she said too quickly. "Nothing like this." I felt the truck rock as we pulled away from the curb. Daniel's voice came from somewhere near my feet, anxious and oddly focused. Is she going to be able to talk to a doctor? He asked. Like, make decisions? Or will someone else have to sign for her? The paramedic frowned. We'll worry about that when we get there. Sir. The lights above me blurred into streaks as I slipped in and out of consciousness. Somewhere, deep down beneath the pain and the humiliation, a cold, clear thought crystallized. When she smashed that cake into my face, it wasn't just a prank. It was the final accident they needed. When the officers finally parted the curtain, I felt like a bug under a glass. One was a woman about my son's age, dark hair pulled back, uniform crisp. The other hung back slightly, a notepad in hand. Behind them, Karen, the social worker, hovered with that gentle, watchful expression I was starting to recognize. Mrs. Thompson, the woman said. I'm Officer Ramirez. This is Officer Blake. Dr. Padal asked us to speak with you about some concerns. Concerns? I echoed, my mouth dry. Dr. Padal stepped in behind them, a printout in his hand. We'd like to go over your scans with you, he said. Is that okay? I nodded. What else was there to do? He clipped the films up on a light board mounted to the wall. The black and white images glowed. Ghostly outlines of my ribs, my spine, my skull. I'd never seen myself like that before. It was unsettling, like looking at my own X-ray in a textbook. Here, he said, pointing to a faint line on one of the rib images. This is from tonight. A small fracture, fortunately not displaced. Painful, but it should heal. I winced just looking at it. But here. He moved his finger slightly. This is an older hairline fracture, already calcifying. And here, on this side, another. He switched to a different image. Your wrist shows evidence of a previous break as well, older than the stairs incident you mentioned. And this, he indicated a compressed area in my lower spine, is a mild compression fracture, not new, months, maybe a year old. I stared, unable to reconcile the pale lines on the film with the aches I'd written off as getting older. These patterns, he said carefully, are unusual for a single fall or even two. Bones heal, Mrs. Thompson. What worries me is that you were never allowed to heal without being hurt again. My throat tightened. You're saying someone did this to me? I'm saying, he replied, that the injuries, combined with what you and your friend described from tonight, raise serious suspicions of ongoing harm. It could be neglect, unsafe conditions, or something more intentional. Either way, we have a responsibility to investigate. Karen stepped closer, pulling a chair to my bedside. My job, she said, sitting, is to advocate for you. We're concerned about your safety at home. Can we ask you some questions about who you live with and how things have been? I swallowed hard. My son, Daniel, and his wife, Lena. They moved in last year. Officer Ramirez flipped open her notebook. How would you describe your relationship with them? I thought of Daniel's arm around me at the party, of Lena's fingers digging into my skin. Complicated, I said. They say they're helping. Sometimes it feels like help. Other times, Karen prompted softly. Other times I feel like a problem they're managing, I admitted. The words tumbled out faster now. They say I fall a lot. I guess I do. The stairs, the kitchen. But I never used to. Not until they moved in, and they've been asking me to sign things. Wills. Powers of attorney. I signed one, medical. But I hid the old will and the deed. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? It sounds cautious, Karen said. Who controls your finances right now? Your bank account's bills. Lena does most of the online stuff, I said slowly. She says I'll get scammed if I try it. I still have my checkbook, but the statements, they look different. There was a letter about a new user, but she said it was an error. Officer Ramirez's pen scratched across the page. Have you noticed money missing? Bills unpaid? I don't know, I admitted, shame rising hot in my chest. I thought I just wasn't keeping up. Any witnesses to the way they treat you? She asked. Friends, neighbors, family? Ruth? I said without thinking. My neighbor. She was at the party. She's been worried. Almost on cue, the curtain rustled again. Ruth's face appeared pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. Is she okay? She blurted, ignoring everyone else, coming straight to my side. They said she hit her head. Margaret, can you hear me? I said, reaching for her hand. I'm all right. Or I will be. She squeezed hard. I told them what I saw, she said. jerking her chin toward the officers. "I told them about the bruises, the way that girl talks to you, and what I overheard about the house being in their name." Officer Blake nodded. "Mrs. Thompson, your friend has been very helpful," he said. "Between her statement and what we're seeing on your scans, we're concerned that there may be both physical and financial abuse happening." Abuse. There it was again, like a drumbeat. This time, instead of flinching, I let the word settle. "I kept thinking I was just old," I said slowly. "Clumsy. But maybe I was just being pushed." Silence fell for a moment, thick with what that admission meant. "Sometimes," Officer Ramirez said quietly, "the hardest cases are the ones where the suspect shares your blood. But that doesn't make what's happening any less wrong." Karen leaned in. "Did you give explicit permission for someone to be added to your bank account?" she asked. "Or to open new lines of credit in your name?" "No," I said firmly. "Not that I remember. They might have slipped something in with other papers, but I didn't knowingly sign away my money." She nodded, lips pressed together. "We can have the Financial Crimes Unit look into that," she said. "And an elder law specialist can review any documents they had you sign." "I have the old will and the deed," I said suddenly, "hidden in my recipe box, under the meatloaf card." It felt absurd to say it out loud, but also oddly grounding. "That could be very important," Officer Ramirez said. "We'll make sure someone retrieves them with your permission, without tipping off your son or daughter-in-law." Ruth glanced at me, something like pride flickering in her eyes. "See," she said softly. "You're not helpless. You've already been protecting yourself." Dr. Padel stepped closer again. "Mrs. Thompson, right now you're safe here," he said. "We won't discharge you until we know you have somewhere safe to go. But we need to ask, are you willing to make a formal statement, alleging that you may be the victim of abuse and exploitation?" My heart lurched. Making a statement meant putting Daniel and Lena under a harsh light. It meant admitting, to strangers in uniforms, that my own child had stood by while his wife turned my home into a hazard. "I don't want my son thrown in jail," I whispered. He's still my boy." "No one's asking you to decide his punishment," Karen said gently. "We're asking you to tell the truth about what's been happening, so the proper people can look into it. So you can be safe. Blood isn't a free pass to hurt you." Ruth tightened her grip on my hand. "You deserve to be safe, Margaret," she said, her voice rough. "This is not love. Love doesn't bruise you and drain your bank account and laugh about it." I thought of Daniel as a little boy, promising to buy me a big house someday. I thought of him last night, standing in the hallway, whispering about selling the only house I'd ever really known. Something inside me shifted. The part that had been making excuses, smoothing things over, minimizing every sharp edge. She sat down and went quiet. In her place, another voice rose up, older. "Done. All right," I said. "I'll make a statement." Officer Ramirez nodded, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said. "We'll take it slow. We'll start with facts. How long they've lived with you, when the falls began, any documents they've asked you to sign. We'll also need the names of anyone who might have taken photos or videos at the party. That footage could be key." "Ruth was filming," I said. "And I saw my niece with her phone up during the cake, before I fell." "We'll follow up," Blake said, jotting it down. As they asked their questions, the story unraveled from me in threads. How Lena reorganized my life, one drawer at a time. How my medicines changed without explanation. How my money started to feel like it belonged to everyone but me. With each detail, the picture sharpened. Not just for them, but for me. By the time we were done, I felt wrung out, but strangely lighter. My life, laid bare in bullet points and timestamps, was ugly in ways I'd never wanted to name. But it was real. No more pretending. "We're going to open an investigation," Officer Ramirez said when she'd closed her notebook. "We'll quietly obtain your bank records, check for suspicious transactions, and coordinate with an elder law attorney. We'll also request that your son and daughter-in-law not be allowed to make any medical or financial decisions for you until this is sorted." Karen nodded. "We can file for a temporary protective order," she said. "It would prevent them from accessing you directly or altering your affairs while the case is active. And we'll connect you with legal aid. There are lawyers who focus on exactly this kind of situation. She pulled out her phone. If you're comfortable, we can call one now, put them on speaker so you can hear directly from them. I hesitated, then nodded. The sooner I knew where I stood, the better. A few minutes later, a calm male voice filled the small ER cubicle. "Ms. Thompson, my name is David Lynn," he said. "I'm an attorney with the Elder Law Clinic. First, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Second, I want you to know you have more power than you think." We went over the basics. What a power of attorney could and couldn't do. How it could be misused. How, without my clear, voluntary consent, no one could legally sell my home. "Capacity is key," he said. "If there's any question that you were pressured, medicated, or missiled when you signed something, that document may not hold up. And if signatures were forged, that's a separate criminal matter." I listened, absorbing every word like oxygen. "We'll schedule a full consultation once you're medically stable," he concluded. "In the meantime, do not sign anything else. Not one scrap of paper. If they try to push something in front of you, politely refuse and call us or the police." "I won't sign," I said. I meant it. After the call ended, the room felt different. The same beige walls, the same beeping monitor, the same ache in my skull. But the air seemed clearer somehow. Like a window had been cracked open in a stuffy room. "From here," Officer Ramirez said, "we're going to need you to be brave. We'll be looking into your accounts, your property records, any documents they've already filed. Some of what we find may hurt. Are you ready to hear what they've already done with your money?" I took a slow breath. Images flashed through my mind: Lena's designer bags, Daniel's new phone, the way their car payment always got made on time while my grocery list got shorter. "I'm ready," I said. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just waiting for the next fall. I was standing up, if only in my mind, and deciding not to go down quietly. The next few weeks felt like watching someone slowly pull up a rug and finding rot underneath the floorboards. I was moved from the ER to a regular room, then to a short-term rehab wing so they could monitor my head injury and help me regain my balance. In between sessions with a physical therapist who made me march in place and practice standing up without wobbling, people in suits and uniforms came and went, each one tugging at a different corner of my life. David Lynn, the elder law attorney, arrived first with a slim briefcase and kind eyes that missed nothing. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, Sergeant Hayes, came with him, a laptop under his arm. "We've pulled your bank records for the past 18 months, David said, setting up at the little table by the window. "With your consent, of course." I nodded, my fingers wrapped around the foam cup of lukewarm tea Karen had brought. "Go ahead," I said. "At this point, I'd rather know." A haze turned the laptop so I could see. Rows of numbers scrolled past, more digits than I'd ever dealt with in my years of balancing checkbooks by hand. "Here's your pension deposit," he said, pointing. "Social Security, routine utilities, and here," he clicked, and a list of transfers appeared, all bearing my name. "These are online transfers," he explained, "from your savings account into a joint account listed under Daniel Thompson and Lena Thompson." My stomach lurched. "Joint account," I repeated. "I don't have a joint account with them." "You do now," he said grimly. "Or at least, according to the bank." These started about 6 months after they moved in. First small, 200 here, 500 there. Then larger, 2,000, 3. He scrolled further. My savings balance shrank before my eyes like a snowbank in the sun. "They treated your life savings like their personal ATM," he said. My eyes blurred. "I never authorized that," I whispered. "I never even saw those screens." David nodded. "That's where the online user letter comes in," he said. "We can argue that you were not informed, that consent was not properly obtained. And this," he clicked to another tab, "is a credit report we pulled on you." My own name stared back at me, alongside an unfamiliar account. "What's that?" I asked, pointing with a trembling finger. "A line of credit opened last spring," Hayes said. $10,000. The mailing address is your house. The IP address used to open it traces back there." 2. 10,000. I croaked. "I've never borrowed that kind of money in my life." "According to the statements," he went on, "the card was used for a series of purchases: high-end clothing stores, a spa, Travel charges for a real estate conference. In Florida, some online furniture retailers. I don't travel, I said numbly. I don't even like flying. David sat back. They didn't just pressure you, Margaret, he said softly. In my opinion, they committed fraud. A hot, twisting anger rose in my chest, cutting through the numbness. Every time Lena had come home with a new handbag, every dinner out they'd bragged about while telling me we had to be careful with the grocery budget. It all rewrote itself in my memory. Every birthday card I saved from him. I thought bitterly, behind my back. He was signing my name away. They'd also brought the folder of documents Lena had shoved under my nose that afternoon at the kitchen table. David slipped on a pair of glasses and flipped through them, his brow furrowing. Several of these require witness signatures, he said. They're blank. That alone could invalidate them, and this one. He held up a photocopy of a deed transfer I'd never seen in my life. My name loomed large at the bottom. That's not my signature, I said immediately. The handwriting tilted slightly wrong, the loops were too perfect. I knew my own hand, shaky in places, the way my G always drooped. We thought you'd say that, Hayes said. We've already sent it to a forensic handwriting expert. Early opinion, it's likely forged. The strokes are hesitant in spots, like someone copying from a sample. I closed my eyes, fighting a wave of dizziness that had nothing to do with my head injury. They were going to steal my house, I whispered. They didn't even wait for me to die. David's voice was steady. We've filed for an emergency injunction to freeze any further withdrawals or property transfers in your name, he said. The bank has been notified. All suspicious activity is on hold pending this investigation. We're also petitioning to revoke any powers of attorney granted under questionable circumstances. So they can't touch anything else, I said. Not without committing more obvious crimes, he said. And even then, we'd catch it quickly. Meanwhile, Officer Ramirez and Officer Blake were busy tracking down people from the party. My phone, now in Ruth's capable hands, buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Your niece had this, Ramirez said on her next visit, holding up her own phone. She sent us a copy. It was the video Ruth had mentioned. The screen showed my living room, full of people, the giant cake, the banner. My own face, smiling nervously. The singing, Lena stepping up behind me, cake in hand. Watch her right hand, Ramirez said, slowing the video to half speed. We watched as Lena leaned in. The cake should have gone straight toward my face in a jokey, messy smear. Instead, her right hand pushed, not just forward but up into my chin. My head snapped back harder than any prank required. My feet slid, my body lurched. Right after my head hit and I disappeared from view, the camera jostled. In the chaos, the audio picked up Lena's voice, closer to the mic than anyone else's. Oops, she said, a nervous little laugh in her tone. Guess we'll be calling the nursing home now. Hearing it made my skin crawl. It's not a smoking gun legally, Ramirez said. But combined with the old injuries and the financial records, it paints a pretty damning picture. My regular doctor, Dr. Stevens, came by one afternoon looking sheepish. When I got the report from the ER, he said, I pulled your file. All the notes about frequent falls, the bruises you brushed off. In hindsight, the pattern should have been a red flag. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. He added his concerns to the growing stack of documentation, photos of bruises he'd taken, notes about my complaints of dizziness and fatigue. In the small breaks between all of this, Karen visited not just as a social worker, but as something like a counselor. You keep looking at the door, she observed once as I stared at the empty doorway. Who are you waiting for? Daniel. I admitted. Part of me still thinks he'll come in red-eyed and say he had no idea what she was doing. That he'll fix it. Like when he broke my vase at 8 and spent his allowance to replace it. And if he doesn't? She asked gently. I swallowed. Then I have to accept that he chose his side, I said. And that I'm not destroying my family by doing this. They already destroyed the trust. Exactly, she said. You're not the one on trial here. They are. Not long after, David received confirmation from the court. The emergency injunction was granted. Further, a hearing was set to address my finances and the alleged fraud. Daniel and Lena were served notices at the house, copies of which were placed carefully in my chart for me to read. According to Ramirez, the reaction at home had not been calm. Neighbors reported raised voices. Through the thin walls, someone heard Lena shouting, "You said she'd sign everything! Now we're exposed." And Daniel snapping back. What was I supposed to do, hold a pen in her hand? She's not as stupid as you think. If it hadn't been my life they were arguing about, I might have found the irony satisfying. Now we need to bring them into a controlled environment, David said during his next visit. We'll say we want to clarify some paperwork and update the estate plan. They'll come, thinking they can charm or bully you into backing down. We'll have police present nearby in case things escalate. Do I have to be there? I asked. The idea of seeing them, sitting across a table, made my stomach churn. You don't have to, he said. But it could be powerful. For you and for the case. This is your chance to look them in the eye and tell your story. Ruth, who'd made herself a near-constant presence at my bedside, chimed in. I'll be there, she said. They won't lay a finger on you with half the police force breathing down their necks. I thought of how small I'd felt lately in my own home, tiptoeing around their moods, apologizing for existing. The idea of walking, while shuffling, into a room where the power wasn't tilted in their favor awakened something fierce in me. All right, I said. I'll go. We set a date. On paper, it was a family estate meeting at David's office to discuss recent legal developments. In reality, it would be the first time the three of us sat in the same room since the party, with the full weight of the law hovering just out of sight. The night before, I barely slept. Memories paraded through my mind. Daniel on the first day of kindergarten, clutching my hand. Daniel dropping off my groceries after John died. Daniel standing in my hallway, whispering about how long things could drag on. The morning of the meeting, an orderly wheeled me down to the hospital entrance. Ruth waited by the curb with her car, arms folded, eyes hard. I brought the good cane, she said, handing me the one with the rubber tip John had insisted I buy years ago. If you feel wobbly, lean on me. I stood slowly, my head still a little tender but my mind sharper than it had been in months. The air outside was crisp, the sun too bright. As we drove to David's office, my hands twisted in my lap. You can still back out, Ruth said at a red light. We'll still go through with the case. You don't have to see them today. I know, I said. But I need to. For me. When we arrived, the receptionist led us down a carpeted hallway to a conference room. Through the glass wall, I could see the polished table, the leather chairs, the stack of neatly arranged folders with my name on them. Behind another closed door down the hall, I knew Officer Ramirez and Sergeant Hayes were waiting, listening ready. David met us at the conference room entrance. Are you sure? He asked quietly. Once we start, a lot of truths will come out. It may be painful. I've been living with lies for a long time, I said. I'm ready for painful truth. He nodded, opened the conference room door, and gestured for me to enter. As I stepped over the threshold with my cane in hand, I took a deep breath. My heart pounded against my ribs, but there was steel under the fear. On the other side of that room, my son and his wife were about to find out that the woman they'd treated like a confused old fool had more fight left in her than they ever imagined. They were already there when I walked in. Daniel sat stiffly on one side of the long conference table, fingers drumming on the polished wood. Lena was beside him, perfect hair, perfect makeup, one leg crossed over the other so her heel swung impatiently. A thick folder lay in front of them, untouched. For a moment, seeing my son in that expensive shirt, I was back at his high school graduation, proud and hopeful. Then he looked up, saw my cane, and his mouth tightened into a line I didn't recognize. Mom, he said. Why are you in a wheelchair? I'm not, I said, easing myself into the chair David pulled out for me. I walked in. Lena let out a little breathy laugh. We thought this was just going to be some paperwork, she said. You didn't have to make it so dramatic. David took his seat beside me. Ruth on my other side like a small, solid wall. He set a neat stack of documents on the table, his expression neutral. Thank you for coming, he said. We do need to discuss paperwork. But first, I want to clarify something. This isn't just about estate planning. It's about certain actions that have already been taken with Mrs. Thompson's finances and property. Lena's smile tightened. We were just trying to protect her, she said quickly. This is all a misunderstanding. She's been confused lately. I'm not confused. I cut in. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Daniel shot me a warning look. Mom, relax, he said. You scared us with those falls. We had to step in. We're just trying to keep you safe. David folded his hands. Let's look at the facts, he said.
Mrs.
Thompson has given me permission to share what we found. He slid the first set of papers toward them. These are bank statements, he said. They show multiple transfers from her savings account into a joint account in your names. Transfers she did not authorize. Lena waved a hand. We talked about this, she said. Online banking is confusing for her. We set up a system so we could manage bills. It's all household expenses. Hayes, who had slipped quietly into a chair at the far end of the table, spoke up. Household expenses, he repeated. Like spa trips, designer handbags, and a real estate conference in Florida. All charged to a credit line opened in Margaret's name without her knowledge. Daniel's face drained of color. That's not fair, he stammered. We would have paid it back. Once I got a job. It was temporary. David slid another document forward, the photocopy of the deed transfer. And this? He asked. A quitclaim deed transferring title of the house from Mrs. Thompson solely to Daniel Thompson and spouse. Filed with the county recorder. With a signature a forensic expert has concluded is not Margaret's. I watched my son's eyes flick to the signature, then to me. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Lena leaned forward, her earrings swinging. You signed those, Marge, she said sharply. You probably don't remember. We had a whole talk about it. No, I said softly. We had a talk. I didn't sign. I remember very clearly refusing. David's voice stayed calm. The lack of proper witnesses and the expert's assessment make this look very much like forgery, he said. Which is a felony. Lena's carefully painted face hardened. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's been falling all over the place, forgetting things, misplacing items. We stepped in because no one else would. You're twisting it. David tapped the next folder. Let's look at the falls then, he said. Her CAT scans show multiple fractures of different ages. Her primary care doctor has documented a pattern of unexplained injuries. And then there's this. He nodded to Hayes, who produced his phone, propped it up, and pressed play. The conference room filled with the familiar off-key strain of Happy Birthday. We watched the shaky video of my living room, the cake, the candles. My shoulders rose and fell as I took that last breath. Watch her hands, Hayes said quietly. We all watched as Lena leaned in, shoving the cake not just forward but up hard into my chin. We watched my head snap back, my feet skid, my body crash off-screen. The room fell silent in the video, then a shriek, then chaos. In the middle of that chaos, clear as a bell now that someone had isolated the sound, came Lena's voice. Oops. Guess we'll be calling the nursing home now. In the conference room, the only sound was the hum of the air vent. That's not. Lena started, then faltered. Everyone pushes an old lady into a chair as a joke, she said, her voice rising. You've all seen those videos online. It was a prank. You're making it sound like I tried to kill her. Love doesn't make you shove someone down the stairs and sign their name behind their back, I said quietly. She swung toward me. You're really going to do this? She hissed. After everything we've done for you. David's gaze was steady. This isn't family drama, he said. This is a criminal pattern. Financial exploitation. Forgery. Physical harm to a vulnerable adult. It's bigger than whether Margaret wants to be generous with her estate. The door at the far end of the room opened. Officer Ramirez and Officer Blake stepped in, badges visible, expressions sober. Daniel Thompson, Lena Thompson, Ramirez said, her voice clipped. We've been listening from the next room. At this time, you are both subjects of an active investigation into financial exploitation and possible elder abuse. Lena's chair scraped back. You tricked us, she spat. You set us up, Memphis. Thompson has been more than patient. Ramirez replied. Now the law has to speak for her. Blake stepped forward, reading from a small card. You are not under arrest at this moment, he said, but you are being advised of your rights. You have the right to remain silent. As he spoke, the last of the color leached from Daniel's face. He looked suddenly old, lines etched deeper around his eyes. This is insane, he blurted when Blake finished. We're her family. We were just trying to secure our future. Her future. You can't treat us like criminals. You secured your future with her money, Hayes said flatly. Without her consent. While she was being injured in her own home. That's exactly how we treat criminals. Lena's mask cracked then. The sweetness, the fake concern. All of it fell away, leaving something brittle and mean. The finances were Daniel's idea, she snapped, jabbing a finger at him. He's the one who said his mom would be okay with it, that she owed us for moving in. I just did the paperwork because he's useless with forms. Daniel whipped his head toward her. You're the one who wanted the house. He shot back. You're the one who pushed and pushed about selling, about liquidating assets. You said if I loved you, I'd get you that deed. You're the one who messed with her meds. Daniel. Ramirez cut in sharply. I'd advise you to stop talking unless your lawyer is present. But the dam had burst. They turned on each other in a flurry of accusations, each one peeling back another layer I hadn't wanted to see. You're the one who said she'd be dead in 10 years anyway, Lena spat. You were just speeding things up. You said that? He yelled. You called her a walking reverse mortgage. Ruth sucked in a sharp breath beside me. I felt the words like a blow, but there was a strange clarity, too. This, I thought, is who they are when they think I'm not listening. It was my turn. Enough, I said. My voice didn't boom or crack, but it cut through their shouting all the same. They both looked at me then, really looked, perhaps for the first time in months. I may be 70, I said, and my bones may not be what they used to be. But I am not senile, I am not crazy, and I am not your ATM, your golden goose, or your walking reverse mortgage. I am the woman who worked double shifts so you could go on class trips, Daniel. The woman who packed your lunches and stayed up late sewing costumes and sold her jewelry when your father got laid off so we wouldn't lose that house. Daniel's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. I let you move back in. I went on, because I thought we were family. I thought we'd take care of each other. Instead, I started falling in my own home. The stairs became dangerous. The kitchen floor was slick. My pills changed without my say-so. Every time I asked a question, I was told I was forgetting, exaggerating, being difficult. I looked at Lena. You took my recipes out of my kitchen and called them clutter. You took my dignity, one little joke at a time, in front of my neighbors and friends. And you took my name and scribbled it on papers I never agreed to sign. She looked away, jaw clenched. I raised you to protect the vulnerable, I said to Daniel. How did you become the one hurting them? He opened his mouth, closed it. I didn't hit you, he whispered finally. I never laid a hand on you. You didn't stop her, I replied. You watched it happen. You let her turn my life into a trap because it benefited you. That's not much better. Silence settled heavy. Even the air conditioner sounded far away. David cleared his throat gently. From this point forward, he said, slipping into his professional cadence, all control of Mrs. Thompson's finances is returned to her, with a neutral fiduciary appointed to assist as needed. The court has already issued an emergency protective order prohibiting either of you from contacting her, approaching her home, or accessing her accounts without legal counsel present. He looked directly at them. In addition, based on the evidence you've just seen and what we've uncovered so far, my office is formally recommending that the district attorney pursue charges for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Lena shot to her feet. You can't do this? She snarled. We're a family. She's going to die alone in that dusty mausoleum, and you're all going to feel so guilty. You don't get to decide how I die, I said quietly. Or how I live. Ramirez stepped forward. Mrs. Thompson has made her wishes very clear, she said. You'll receive formal notice of the charges and court dates. In the meantime, do not attempt to contact her. If you do, you'll be arrested on the spot. Blake moved to stand between them and the door. Are we under arrest now? Daniel asked, voice small. Not today, Hayes said. But I wouldn't make any travel plans. Ruth leaned in close to my ear. You did it, she whispered. You really did it. As the officers escorted them out, Lena twisted in Blake's grip, her composure finally gone. Enjoy your empty house, you ungrateful old hag, she yelled, her voice echoing off the glass walls. See how much your precious neighbors care when you're drooling in a chair. I flinched, but only for a second. Daniel hesitated at the threshold, looking back at me. For a heartbeat, I saw my little boy again, lost and scared. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. "We just wanted to secure our future. We thought." I held up a hand. "No." "Son?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper but steady as bedrock. "You chose greed over me. That's all." He stared at me like he'd never seen me before, then turned and followed his wife down the hall. The door closed behind them with a soft click. For a long moment, no one moved. The adrenaline drained out of me, leaving a trembling exhaustion in its wake. And yet, beneath the fatigue, there was something else. A quiet, fierce relief. I had not stopped them from being who they were. But I had finally started being who I needed to be. It's been almost a year since that day in the conference room, and the house feels different now. The walls are the same, the creaks in the stairs haven't gone anywhere, and my old maple tree still throws its shade across the porch in the afternoons. But there's a kind of stillness now that isn't made of fear. It's something closer to peace. The legal part took months. Lawyers' hearings, paperwork piled higher than my old recipe cards. I won't bore you with every court date, but I will tell you how it ended. The district attorney decided to press charges. Lena was charged with fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Daniel was charged, too, though the prosecutors took into account that he eventually cooperated, handing over emails and messages that showed how far she'd pushed things. In the end, the judge said the evidence against Lena was overwhelming. She took a plea deal on some of the charges. She didn't go away for decades like you see on television, but she did spend time in county jail, and she came out with a record and an order to pay restitution. The court said she was never to manage the finances of a vulnerable adult again. Daniel's sentence was lighter: probation, mandatory counseling, community service at a senior center. He stood there in his suit, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, as the judge told him that failing to stop harm is not so different from doing it. The court affirmed what David had told me from the start: my house was mine. Any deed they tried to sneak through was declared void. The emergency injunction became a more permanent protective order. For the first time since John died, I saw my name alone on that title and felt it as both a weight and a shield. I'm still in this house, but I'm not alone in quite the same way. Karen helped me arrange for a home care aide a few mornings a week, paid in part through programs I didn't even know existed. A woman named Carla comes in, helps with the heavy cleaning, checks my pillbox with me instead of for me, and swats my hand playfully if I try to climb a step stool. Ruth, bless her, is here more than ever. We've fallen into an easy rhythm. Coffee on my porch in the mornings, our lawn chairs set just so, gossip about the neighborhood in the afternoons. Some days we don't talk much at all, just sit together listening to the wind in the maple leaves. The bruises have faded from my skin. The ones on my heart are slower to go. People ask about Daniel, quietly. In that way folks do when they're not sure if they're picking at a scab. I don't see him. That's a choice I made after a lot of sleepless nights and long talks with Karen and Ruth. He tried to come by once, right after the sentencing. The doorbell rang, and when I checked the camera Carla helped me install, there he was, on my porch with his shoulders hunched, a paper bag in his hands. "I just want to talk, Mom," he said through the intercom, his voice tinny. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Lena." She twisted things. "I wasn't thinking straight. Can't we fix this?" Once upon a time, I would have flung that door open, pulled him into my arms and smoothed his hair like when he was a boy. Instead, I stood there with my hand on the doorknob and felt empty. The protective order gave me the right to say no. But more than that, the last year had taught me something harder. Just because someone is sorry doesn't mean you owe them access to you. "I hope you do your counseling," I said into the speaker. "I hope you learn from this, but I need to feel safe in my own home. For now, that means we keep our distance." He said something else, voice cracking, but I turned the volume down. When he finally left, the bag stayed on the porch. Later, Ruth opened it. My favorite cookies from the bakery downtown, a framed photo of us from years ago at the state fair, his handwriting on a card that said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wish I could undo it." I put the photo face down in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll turn it over again. Maybe I won't. Forgiveness is its own slow process. But trust, once broken like that, doesn't go back the way it was. It grows back, if it grows at all, in different shapes. I won't lie to you. The hardest part of all this wasn't the broken bones, the headaches, or even the humiliation of that cake in my face. The hardest part was facing the fact that my own child put me at risk, that he let someone use me as a stepping stone to a better lifestyle. When you're a parent, you spend so much of your life making excuses for your children. He's tired. She's stressed. They didn't mean it like that. At some point, the excuses stop being about understanding and start being about avoiding the truth. I used to think keeping quiet was the same as keeping peace. If I didn't complain, if I didn't make waves, then we'd all get along and everything would be fine. Now I know silence only protected the people hurting me. If there's anything I want you to take from my story, it's this: greed can twist family into strangers. Respecting your elders doesn't mean taking over their life and calling it help. It means listening to them when they say something feels wrong. It means asking before you put your hands on their money, their body, their home. Blood is just biology. It's not a blank check. The people who showed up for me in the end weren't the ones who shared my DNA. It was a doctor looking at my X-ray and refusing to look away. It was a neighbor who saw bruises and didn't tell herself a comforting little story to explain them away. Blood alone doesn't make someone family. Actions do. And if you're an older person listening to this, or someone who loves one, hear me clearly: it isn't disloyal to protect yourself, even from your own children. It isn't a betrayal to have your own lawyer, to keep your own bank statements, to say no when someone waves papers under your nose and tells you to sign. For your own good. Watch for patterns, accidents that keep happening around the same person, jokes that always cut the same way, money that disappears without clear answers. Pay attention when people start talking more about your assets than about you. If something in your gut feels wrong at home, please believe yourself sooner than I did. Talk to someone who doesn't live under your roof. A friend, a neighbor, a doctor, a hotline. Let another pair of eyes look at what you've been trying so hard not to see. In the end, the people who saved me weren't the ones I expected. It wasn't my son or my daughter-in-law. It was a doctor looking at my X-ray, seeing old fractures that shouldn't have been there. It was a neighbor who refused to laugh off my bruises as clumsiness. It was a social worker and a lawyer who reminded me that my life, my home, and my name still belonged to me. Now, I sit on my porch with Ruth and watch the sun set behind that old maple tree John and I planted, and I feel something like gratitude. Not for what I went through. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But for the chance to come out the other side with my dignity intact. I'm curious what you think. Do you believe you should press charges if your own child tries to hurt you for money? Is there a line where love has to step aside and let the law do its job? And have you ever felt someone treated you differently because they were waiting for an inheritance, or because they thought they had a claim on what you've worked for? Maybe it was subtle. A joke. A question about your will that didn't sit right. Maybe it was something bigger. If you're comfortable, share your stories in the comments. Sometimes hearing what others have gone through helps us feel less alone. And your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to wake up. And if you know an older person who might be in a situation like mine, falling more than they used to, suddenly needing help, with all their accounts being joked about as forgetful or clumsy, please share this story with them. Sometimes just hearing that they're not imagining things is the first step to getting help. If you want to hear more stories like this, about families, money, and the hard choices we have to make as we get older, make sure you stick around, subscribe, and let us know where you're listening from. Wherever you are, I hope you remember this: your safety, your peace, and your dignity are worth more than any house, any bank account, any illusion of family. And you have the right to protect them.